Today we are looking at a case from the first part of the 20th century, so sit back as we go to England. In 1909, Emily Tredrea was only 16 years old, the eldest daughter of Mr. John and Mrs. Grace Tredrea. She had 3 siblings, a younger brother named Roland, who was 9, a 6-year-old sister named Gwendolyn, and a 1-year-old sister named Beatrice. The family lived in the county of Cornwall, in the village of St. Earth, in a small 4-bedroom cottage. The cottage was at the entrance to Vicarage Drive, and stood at the end of a row of cottages that branched off the main road. It was quite secluded, and reached by a narrow path running along a small enclosed garden. Mrs. Grace Tredrea brought up the children, as her husband was working in a mine in South Africa. For many families at the time, life was difficult. Wages were low in both industrial and rural areas. Employment was often irregular, and there was little support if illness or job loss occurred. Because of this, some men chose to go overseas for work. The mining industry in South Africa after the Second Boer War was expanding rapidly and offered higher wages than could be earned at home. Mining companies actively recruited British workers, and although the conditions were dangerous and the separation from a family could last months or even years, the wages offered represented the prospect of a real financial improvement. Many men, such as John Tredrea, chose to leave home in the hope of sending money back and securing a more stable future for those they left behind. Emily was described as having a gentle appearance and was liked by all those who knew her. She was a member of the Wesleyan Band of Hope choir and took part in all of its activities. She had finished school but did not work. Instead, she lived at home and helped her mother look after her brother and 2 sisters. As well as Emily, her 3 siblings, and her mother, there was one more person living in the house, a young man named William Hampton. He was 23 years old, had been born and raised in St. Earth, and had been working as a miner. However, he had not lived all his life in the village, as when he was 18, he went to America with his family, but returned to England alone in November 1907. Mrs. Tredrea was friendly with William Hampton's grandmother and had known him since he was a child, so she was not displeased when he became friendly with Emily, and in October 1908, he came to lodge in Mrs. Tredrea's property. This arrangement suited both William and Mrs. Tredrea. He was able to see Emily every day, while Mrs. Tredrea, with her husband working away in Johannesburg, had the help of a young man who could assist with various tasks around the house. William was described as tall, clean-shaven, and of sober habits, but it was said that he possessed a gloomy and withdrawn nature. At Christmas 1908, William and Emily became engaged. Mrs. Tredrea did not object to this, despite her daughter being just 16. However, Emily and William were rarely seen walking together, and there were those in the village who questioned if Emily really had any feelings for him. A few months after announcing their engagement, the attention that William Hampton paid to Emily was no longer welcome, and it became increasingly clear that she did not wish to encourage his interest. However, William did not seem to realise the change in her feelings, and continued to behave as if nothing had altered between them. Late in the evening of Sunday the 2nd of May 1909, Emily was in the company of William Hampton. Mrs. Tredrea had left them together in the kitchen, while she went out to visit her grandmother whom she had been caring for. The 3 other children were in the house, but had all gone to bed. Shortly after Mrs. Tredrea had left, 9-year-old Roland heard the sound of a struggle downstairs. Concerned, he got up to see what was happening, and to his horror found his sister lying on the floor, being held down by William Hampton, who had his knee on her chest and his hands around her throat. Terrified, Roland tried to leave the house, but the door was locked. Shaking, he attempted to get past, but William Hampton shouted at him to step back, saying that he was going to go out himself. A few moments later, William lifted Emily into a chair, but she slumped forward, so he placed her in a wicker chair by the side of the fire, and then left the house. Roland, who was clearly frightened, watched him pass through the gates and cross the road, before running off to fetch help. He quickly found his mother and told her what had happened. Mrs. Tredrea hurried back towards the house in some distress, and on the way encountered Police Constable Ashford, who accompanied her, and when they arrived, they found Emily sitting motionless in the chair. As they looked more closely, it became clear that she was dead. William Hampton, however, had disappeared. Mrs. Tredrea ran out onto the road screaming, and her cries soon brought neighbours from their homes. Within moments, villagers had gathered outside the Tredrea house, many of them still struggling to understand what had taken place. A message was sent to fetch Dr. Davis, but by the time he arrived, death had already taken hold. Marks of violence were clearly visible on Emily's throat, and a more thorough examination showed that considerable force had been used. She was then carried upstairs and laid upon a bed. Although everyone was now in shock, attention turned to the man they considered was responsible. No one knew where William Hampton had gone, even though only a few minutes had passed since Roland had left the house to fetch help and his mother had returned. But now, William was nowhere to be seen. More police officers arrived, and they organised a search. Local men were put into groups, and despite the darkness, they began looking for the suspect. By now, the initial shock in the village had changed to anger, and everyone was determined to find William Hampton. Nearby places were thoroughly checked, including Digger's Pit, the church, outbuildings, cottages, and even the homes of his relatives. Despite these efforts, they were unable to find him. At about 11:30 that night, police constables Wary and Roberts were on duty in the streets of Hale, a town that is about 2.5 miles from St. Earth, when a young man approached them and told them that he had murdered a girl. Unsure whether this was merely some drunken rambling, they nevertheless took him to the police station. Once in custody, William again insisted that he had killed Emily Tredrea, and because of what he had done, he had decided to give himself up. He said that he had been sitting in the kitchen when Emily told him that she would have nothing more to do with him. Then, for some reason, he lost control, rushed at her, and choked her. He said that he later lifted her into a chair and saw that her lips had turned black. He seemed very subdued, and added, "It was temper that caused it, I suppose." Police Constable Roberts informed the police at St. Earth that William Hampton was in custody. Once this news had arrived, Police Constable Ashford made his way to Hale and formally charged William Hampton with the willful murder of Emily Tredrea. However, strangely, William still decided to make a further statement, telling PC Ashford that he had been in the kitchen when she ended their relationship, and he had become angry and attacked her. An inquest was held on the 3rd of May at the Wesleyan schoolroom, and Mr. Richard Allen was chosen as foreman of the jury. The accused, Mr. William Hampton, was present throughout. He was neatly dressed in a dark suit with a white collar and a dark tie, and at times he appeared pale and tense. Mrs. Grace Tredrea, Emily's mother, was the first witness, and in an emotional state, she told of how William Hampton had been staying with the family since October 1908, and that there had never been any trouble between him and her daughter. She said that in the days before the incident, she remembered Emily trying to make it clear that she no longer wished William Hampton to accompany her out or continue his attentions towards her. Looking at the jury, she said that on the day of the incident, she left her home briefly and asked Emily to look after the children, but soon after, her young son came to find her and told her what had happened, so she immediately went back, meeting Police Constable Ashford on the way. She said that when she arrived, she saw her daughter slumped onto a chair. Dr. Davis, the assistant medical officer, also gave testimony. He told the inquest that he was called to St. Earth on Sunday night and arrived at about 11:20. He said that he examined the body of Emily Tredrea just as rigor mortis was beginning to set in. He went on to say that a post-mortem examination was carried out at about 2:30 a.m. by himself and Dr. Mudge, and that they could immediately see marks on the girl's throat, which suggested to them that force had been applied by human hands. He said that following their examination, they were able to confirm that the cause of death was asphyxia due to compression of the windpipe. The doctor was then asked how long it would have taken for her to have died once her windpipe had been compressed in this way, to which Dr. Davies replied that it would have only taken a few minutes of compression to cause her death. Police Constable Ashford was the next witness. He said that on Sunday night, Mrs. Tredrea came running to him in Fore Street, saying that her daughter was dead, so he went to the house with her and entered by a side door, where he saw Emily seated in a chair near a fireplace. He said that he examined her, but she was unresponsive, and there were marks on her throat. He added that although she looked as though nothing could be done for her, he did trial artificial respiration, but after some time concluded that she was dead. He said that following this, he checked the house, but William Hampton was not there, so he sent for Dr. Davies to come at once. Before stepping down, he told the inquest that once he had been informed that William Hampton had been arrested, he went to Hale and formally charged him with willful murder. He said that he searched for suspect, and items including a gold ring and a charm were found on his person, and these items were then identified as belonging to Emily. Roland Tredrea, the victim's brother, was next to give evidence. He said he was nearly 9 years old and understood the difference between right and wrong. He stated that after going to bed that night, he heard a noise, so went downstairs into the kitchen, where he saw his sister on the floor, with William Hampton kneeling over her, holding her down and gripping her throat. He said that he asked what was happening, to which William Hampton replied, "She is only sick." He then described how William Hampton had moved his sister between the floor, a chair, and then a wicker chair, before leaving the house. He said that when William Hampton left, he ran for help. Police Constable Werry, who had arrested the accused, was next to give testimony. He stated that William Hampton came to him while he was on duty in Hale and told him that he had murdered a girl in St Earth. He then said that when in custody, Mr Hampton told him that he wished to make a statement, and then gave the following accounts. "I have been courting Emily Tredrea of St Earth since last October. Tonight, whilst I was in her mother's house, she told me she had given me up and would not go out with me anymore. I felt mad. She was standing at the table eating a piece of cake and drinking a cup of tea. I jumped up from the chair where I was sitting and caught her by the throat with both my hands and held her. We both fell backwards to the floor, and I held her there until she was dead. Then I put her on a chair. I am sure she was dead, because froth was coming out of her mouth. I then ran out of the house and got into the fields and came on to Hale." As this statement was read out, there was a clear reaction in court, with those present visibly disturbed and murmuring breaking out across a public seating area at the details being recounted. The last witness was the accused, William Hampton. He told the inquest that he had been in the kitchen when Emily told him she would have nothing more to do with him. He said he lost control, seized her by the throat, and forced her to the floor, holding her until she stopped breathing. He said that he then placed her in a chair and left the house. He looked nervous, but was speaking in a clear voice, and said that he was not sure where to go, but eventually decided to travel across the fields towards Hale. When all the witnesses had been heard, the coroner told the jury that the evidence was clear for the purpose of the inquiry. He said that it was a very distressing event for a small and peaceful village like St Earth, and it would naturally be a shock to the whole community. He explained that William Hampton had admitted to the police what he had done, and that there was absolutely no doubt that he had caused the girl's death. He said that the only issue was whether the act was murder or manslaughter, and that the law states that unlawful killing carries a presumption of malice, unless proven otherwise. He went on to say that there was nothing in evidence to suggest sufficient provocation, and the fact that the girl had said that she would have nothing more to do with him could not justify what followed. He concluded that the evidence clearly pointed to wilful murder, and that any mitigating circumstances could be considered later at his trial. Looking at the jury, he told them that their duty was to return a guilty verdict. After a short retirement, the jury returned and stated that they found William Hampton guilty of wilful murder. He was then held in custody to await his trial. The funeral of Emily Tredrea took place on Wednesday the 5th of May, and it was estimated that more than 1,000 people lined the route from the house to the village church. Every house had drawn their blinds as a mark of respect, and all local businesses had closed. Those who could not join the procession watched in silence as it passed. The trial began on Thursday the 24th of June 1909 in front of Justice Phillimore. The prosecution was represented by Mr Asquith and Mr Howard, and the defence by Mr Seton. To the charge of wilful murder, William Hampton pleaded not guilty. Mr Asquith outlined the case. He said the prisoner was a minor and had previously lived in America, where he still had family, but had returned to his native village of St Earth in October 1907. He told the court that about a week after his return, he made the acquaintance of Miss Emily Tredrea and became friendly with her and her family. Then, in October 1908, he came to live with them, and by Christmas 1908, he had become engaged to the girl, who was then 16 years of age. Mr Asquith said that after a while, William decided that it would be best if he returned to America, so he would be able to work there and save enough money to come back to St Earth and marry Emily, and he hoped to do this by the time she had reached the age of 20. He added that although he had been employed at the mine, he had lost his position at the beginning of the year after failing to keep up with the expected work. He also pointed out that there was no evidence of a serious disagreement between the prisoner and the girl prior to the night of the murder, but the jury should be aware that the prisoner did have a habit of drinking heavily. The main witnesses were the same as those who had given evidence at the inquest, and their appearance in court followed much the same order as before. Each was called upon to repeat their accounts, though now under a closer and more exacting examination. Matters that had been briefly stated at the inquest were explored more fully, with counsel pressing for greater precision in times, movements and conversations. One point that remained unchanged from the inquest was that the defence again called no witnesses. When all the evidence had been heard, the prosecution and the defence made their closing speeches, each reviewing the testimony and setting out their arguments before the jury retired to consider its verdict. Mr. Asquith, for the prosecution, stated that there were 3 separate confessions made by the prisoner, all of which left no doubt that he had killed the girl by strangling her. He said that the defence claimed that the crime had been committed under sudden provocation, followed immediately by loss of control, but this is not the case, and that no amount of provocation could justify the killing of another person. He added that in this instance, there was no such provocation, and the act was not the result of a sudden impulse. He said that the prisoner had harboured resentment towards the deceased, as she had decided to no longer receive his attentions, so when they were alone, he murdered her. Mr. Seton then addressed the jury for the defence. He asked them not to be swayed by what he described as the powerful rhetoric of Mr. Asquith. He did concede that there was no doubt that William Hampton had caused the girl's death, but said the crucial question was whether it had been done with deliberate intent, which he claimed the evidence showed that it had not, and therefore he argued that the proper verdict was manslaughter. When the judge summed up the case, he directed the jury to determine whether the offence amounted to murder or could properly be reduced to manslaughter. He made it clear that only grave and immediate physical provocation could justify such a reduction, and that nothing of that nature had been established here. He stated that while any alleged provocation might offer context for the act, it could not excuse it. This, he emphasised, was no sudden or impulsive deed. He concluded by reminding the jury that the decision rested entirely with them, and that they should not hesitate to return a verdict of murder if they believed it to be justified. The jury then retired to consider the verdicts, and when they returned, the foreman told the court that they found William Hampton guilty of murder but recommended mercy. Before sentencing, William was asked whether he had anything to say, but he made no reply. The judge then sentenced him to death. An appeal was made for the sentence to be commuted. His counsel argued that the judge had failed to properly direct the jury, particularly in how they should consider the evidence of Emily Tredrea's younger brother, who was the only witness to the crime. It was suggested that the jury had not been clearly guided to consider whether the case might amount to manslaughter rather than murder. The appeal court, however, held that a boy of 9 could give reliable evidence, and stated that sometimes even more reliable than an adult, and described the case as a dreadful act of murder. William Hampton's counsel did not accept the first refusal, and then argued that there had been a quarrel, and the girl had refused to continue her relationship with him, and in this moment of passion, he had seized her without intending to kill her. The court, however, rejected this argument, arguing that it would have taken several minutes of sustained pressure to strangle the girl. This, they said, showed that the act could not have been sudden or accidental. They therefore found no grounds to allow the appeal. In the weeks before his execution, William Hampton spent much of his time in the presence of a priest and in prayer. He was visited by his grandmother, who was relieved to see that he appeared to be facing his final days with religious devotion. His mother wrote to him from America, but she did not return to see him, and at 8 a.m. on the 20th of July 1909, William Hampton was hanged. Hello everyone, and thank you so much for listening. As usual, please leave any comments or feedback you may have, and I hope to see you all again in the next brief case.